Good day. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, December 18th. Your readers this morning are
Lita
and Pat Lamont. And to our weather. Cloudy and breezy today with a little rain late in the afternoon, a high of 48. Occasional rain tonight, a low at 34. Cooler tomorrow with a couple of rain or snow showers, a high of 40. But temperatures falling into the middle 20s. Saturday remaining cloudy and a high of 40. And Sunday breezy and cooler with a high of 33. Not bad for all the shoppers that still have to be out. And nationally, our high was in Naples, Florida, 81. Low was in Gunnison, Colorado, 0. Sunrise this morning at 7:41 a.m. Sunset tonight at 4:43 p.m. And month-to-date snow derby, Buffalo is leading with 15.3 inches, Chicago with 6.9, Minneapolis with 7.8, Denver 4.3. Love this. Anchorage 2.0. Who would have thought? And now to our national and our local news, our front page news. Backed by Hochul, aid in dying bill set to become law. Governor Kathy Hochul will sign a bill to allow terminally ill New Yorkers the option to end their lives with medical assistance. Citing the death of her mother from ALS and conversations with people consumed with pain, the Buffalo-born Democrat said she saw it as a matter of shortening dying, as opposed to shortening life, according to an op-ed Tuesday from Hochul in the Albany-based Times-Union. The Medical Aid in Dying Act will afford terminally ill New Yorkers the right to spend their final days not under sterile hospital lights, but with sunlight streaming through their bedroom window, she wrote. The right to spend their final days not hearing the droning hum of hospital machines, but instead the laughter of their grandkids echoing in the next room. The right to tell their family they love them and be able to hear those precious words in return. New York will become the 13th and 14th jurisdiction to allow terminally ill to end their lives with physician assistance. The bill, introduced in New York since 2016, passed the state legislature for the first time this year. Hochul wrote that the version she will sign into law includes protections to ensure the bill is not misused or broadly approved. Under the bill, terminally New Yorkers seeking life-ending medication will need 2 doctors to verify that they have less than 6 months to live, are mentally competent, and are not being coerced. 2 witnesses, neither of whom can financially benefit from the person's death, must be present for the request. Under amended language sought by Hochul, the bill now requires a mandatory 5-day waiting period to allow a change of mind. The patient must make the request orally and be recorded by video or audio to show it was made willingly. A psychiatrist or psychologist must show that the person was capable of making the decision and not under duress. The bill will allow religiously oriented hospice providers to opt out of the law. It will not take effect until 6 months after the governor signs it, which is expected to happen in January. In Western New York, supporters of the legislation include Melissa Milch, whose father, Robert Milch, was a physician who co-founded hospice and palliative care in 1978. He had been a staunch supporter of the bill prior to his December 21, 2021 death from cancer. Late Tuesday, Melissa Milt received an email from Compassion and Choices, a group advocating for medical aid in dying, signaling to her that Hochul was soon to make her announcement. God, I wish my father were here to see this, the Amherst woman told the news on Tuesday, noting her father and other since-deceased advocates who advocated for the law to be passed over the last decade. Still, Milt said she was concerned about the 6-month delay before the law can begin, the 5-day mandatory waiting period patients face, and the requirement for mental health professional to sign off on the request. While I am thrilled that we finally are going to have some version of the Medical Aid in Dying Act in New York, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a touch disappointed in the proposed amendments and the new hoops that are being presented for dying New Yorkers to have to jump through in order to have this compassionate end of life. One thing that dying people don't have at this time. Hochul wrote that in her deliberation over the bill, she listened to children who watched New Yorkers see their loved ones die slow and painful deaths. I heard stories of a parent or spouse pleading for an end to the suffering and how difficult it was to reply, "We can't in New York." This was heartbreaking, and it hit close to home. I watched my own mom die from ALS. I watched that vicious disease steal away the strong woman who raised me, as it took her ability to walk, to eat, to speak, and ultimately to live. I am too familiar with the pain of seeing someone you love suffer and feeling powerless to stop it. Hochul, who is Catholic, reflected on that history at the Catholic funeral mass for a friend. I was taught that God is merciful and compassionate, and so must we be. This includes permitting a merciful option to those facing the unimaginable and searching for comfort in their final months in this life. The state's Catholic Conference opposed the legislation. This new law signals our government's abandonment of its most vulnerable citizens, telling people who are sick or disabled that suicide in their case is not only acceptable but encouraged by our elected leaders, said a statement from Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who leads the Catholic Conference and the bishops of New York State. Tragically, this new law will seriously undermine all of the anti-suicide and mental health care investments Governor Hochul has made through her tenure. How can any society have credibility to tell young people or people with depression that suicide is never the answer, while at the same time telling elderly and sick people that it is a compassionate choice to be celebrated? The New York Association of Independent Living, which advocates for independent living of New Yorkers with disabilities, issued a statement saying it was deeply disappointed by the governor's decision to sign the bill. Hochul ended her op-ed stating, "I hope those who are disappointed by this outcome know this was a difficult decision for me personally. It was not made lightly. It was guided by a genuine and deeply held belief that government must respect the rights and will of people it serves. I hope that those who oppose this legislation will be able to look with compassion on those who may make a choice they would not make for themselves. And isn't that, at heart, what the choice and freedom our young nation promised to its people 250 years ago is all about?"
And the Islamic State still shows power to inspire attacks. In Australia, a father and son gunned down 15 people celebrating a Jewish holiday at the beach. In England, a Syrian-born British citizen rammed a car into people and attacked others with a knife outside a synagogue on Yom Kippur. On Tuesday, Polish authorities arrested a law student suspected of plotting to attack a Christmas market. All of them were accused of supporting the Islamic State, a terrorist group whose deadly ideology continues to inspire adherents to commit atrocities years after its core organization was badly degraded. The recurring bloodshed shows the group has adapted to a post-caliphate era. It is weakened compared with a decade ago when it held large swaths of territory in Iraq and Syria, and instead now wields propaganda as its most potent tool to inspire deadly attacks. A resurgence would be too strong of a word, said Colin P. Clark, a counterterrorism analyst at the Soufan Group, a global intelligence and security firm based in New York. But the essence of terrorism, beyond the lethality, is the psychological impact, which makes a group like ISIS seem stronger and more omnipresent than it actually is, Clark said, using an alternative name for the Islamic State. The Bondi Beach massacre in Sydney came a day after a member of Syria's security forces killed 2 U.S. Army soldiers and an American civilian interpreter in Palmyra, Syria. President Trump blamed the Islamic State, and officials said the gunman had been slated to be fired because of his extremist views. Terrorism experts expressed concern that the success of the Sydney attack would fuel more extremist plots as the holidays approach, with European Christmas markets an attractive target. Such lone wolf attacks require little funding and are difficult to predict and prevent because they are aimed at vulnerable targets like open-air crowds. The Islamic State's resilience lies on its malleability, survived by shaping itself around its new realities. Rita Katz, executive director and founder of the SITE, or Site Intelligence Group, that tracks terrorism, wrote in an analysis. Since the September 11th attacks, the United States and its allies have greatly diminished the abilities of terrorist organizations to carry out sophisticated plots by taking the fight to their redoubts in such countries as Syria, Afghanistan, and Libya, and by deploying superior firepower and technology. A Sunni Muslim insurgent group, the Islamic State, traces its beginnings to Iraq. After local militias and U.S. troops defeated a branch of al-Qaeda fighters, the group rebranded as the Islamic State. It exploited the chaos of Syria's civil war more than a decade ago to seize vast swaths of territory in the country and in neighboring Iraq. The group gained notoriety for kidnappings, sexual enslavement, and public executions in the Middle East. It orchestrated or inspired terrorist attacks across Europe, including coordinated assaults in France in November of 2015 that killed 130 people, and suicide bombings in Belgium a year later in which nearly 3 dozen were killed. But its self-proclaimed caliphate was largely routed nearly 7 years ago by U.S. troops and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces in northeastern Syria. Because it no longer holds much territory, the Islamic State relies even more on its long-standing playbook of spreading its radical ideology online and through clandestine cells and regional affiliates. Last year, the Islamic State Khorasan branch, based in Afghanistan, claimed responsibility for major attacks in Iran, Russia, and Pakistan. The Islamic State's propaganda urges followers to target gatherings of non-Muslims and provides detailed advice on using guns, bombs, vehicles, knives, or a combination of methods to increase casualties. It is essential to leave some kind of evidence or insignia identifying the motives and allegiance, the group has told followers. British investigators said that the assailant in the synagogue attack that took place on Yom Kippur on the 2nd of August in Manchester pledged allegiance to the Islamic State in a phone call to the emergency services while the assault was underway. After the Bondi attack, Australian police found 2 homemade Islamic State flags in a car the gunmen drove to the scene, evidence that the Islamic State's messages were getting through to people vulnerable to radicalization, experts said. Terrorism breeds in squalid corners of the internet where poisonous ideologies of whatever sort meet volatile, often chaotic individual lives, the head of Britain's M15 domestic intelligence agency, Ken McCullum, warned in October. On Wednesday, authorities announced charges against the surviving suspect in the Bondi shooting, including murder and terrorism offenses. The attacks on Jewish communities in England and Australia were part of a measurable increase in anti-Semitic attacks since Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip in response to the Hamas attack on the 7th of October in 2023 that left about 1,200 people dead and another 250 taken hostage. Israeli attacks on Gaza have killed more than 70,000 people, according to health authorities there, who don't distinguish between civilians and Palestinian fighters. In her analysis, Katz wrote that the Islamic State launched a media campaign after the 7th of October, triggering lone wolf activities in the West. She pointed to attacks in Belgium, Germany, Serbia, and Switzerland, among others. In addition, investigators foiled a plot against the Taylor Swift concert in Vienna that the CIA said could have resulted in massive casualties.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. Improvement needed. There must be a greater focus on the health and well-being of incarcerated persons. A recent report from the Erie County Clergy Jail Visiting Project indicates that Erie County's 2 jails have their fair share of problems troubling jails throughout the country. The report's findings also offer insights into improvements that could be made. As reported by the News' Aaron Bessaker, the project concludes that conditions in the county's jails have improved in some ways, but several ongoing issues remain that must be addressed. The report identified 5 major areas of concern, including issues related to racial justice, food, treatment of women, medical care, and religious worship. These issues directly affect the lives of those incarcerated, but also extend to family and friends concerned about their well-being. And Western New York residents as a whole should be concerned that all members of society are being treated fairly. The report makes 14 recommendations, including conducting a review of disciplinary processes, work assignment protocols, and program access to address suspected racial disparities. It is based on more than 100 interviews conducted by clergy during 6 visits, with 3 each to the Erie County Holding Center and the Correctional Facility over a 2-year period. The Clergy Jail Visiting Project, which describes itself on its Facebook page as a nonprofit interfaith organization, cautions about making snap judgments, as a relatively limited number of people were interviewed. Still, the organization believed that clear patterns could be recognized. Medical care inside the 2 facilities is an item of particular concern, with one example given of a person waiting 2 days for treatment of a broken finger. Equally troubling, close to half of those who participated in the structured interviews said that they either weren't getting the medications they had been taking prior to being incarcerated or had to wait up to 3 weeks or more to receive their medications. The report offered praise for Project Blue, a collaboration between Peace Prince of Western New York and the Sheriff's Office that provides case management, therapy programs, workshops during incarceration, and additional supportive services after release. If anything, there was concern for Project Blue's limited capacity. Given the success of Project Blue, a concerted effort should be made to expand its reach. Sheriff John Garcia also got credit for increasing access to such programs. Garcia has repeatedly said that he wants to focus on mental health services in the county's correctional facilities. Prior to Garcia's tenure, conditions in the jail were justly criticized. Jail deaths were notoriously high in number during the tenure of the previous sheriff. Though deaths have continued, the report cites only 1 known death of a person in custody this year. County officials acknowledge the holding center in downtown Buffalo and the correctional facility in Alden needed to be modernized, but lawmakers are balking at the minimum $430 million it would cost to close the holding center and build a new consolidated jail in Alden. Regardless, no improvements to the brick and mortar facilities are complete with comprehensive attention to the physical and mental health of incarcerated persons. Lita?
Thank you. And in the Another Voice column, we are focusing on energy by Bob Sivselsky. The state's plan should focus on renewables. The New York State Energy Planning Board has released its new energy plan. If Governor Hochul truly wants affordability for New Yorkers, she and the board should have produced a plan that continues to support solar, wind, battery storage, and other renewable energy sources to keep heating, cooling, and electricity costs affordable. This year, National Fuel Gas has increased its rates to customers by 12%, with another 6% increase scheduled before the 2026 heating season. The company has cautioned its customers to expect a 16% rise in heating costs this winter alone. The cost of heating gas will continue to increase for New Yorkers. It has been the business model of National Fuel Gas and other gas utilities to replace old gas lines and to expand their pipeline network. This procedure is much more expensive than replacing the pipelines with electric gas pumps. National Fuel Gas also benefits financially by a state rule called the Obligation to Serve, which requires gas pipelines to be installed whenever any customer in a development requests gas. The company has lobbied strenuously to prevent the Obligation to Serve from being amended to permit other types of heating, including electric heat pumps and geothermal. Further, the Trump administration's bullying of foreign countries to purchase gas from the U.S. through threats of tariffs and unfriendly trade practices will naturally increase U.S. gas prices as domestic supplies dwindle. Globally, solar panels and land-based wind projects hooked to storage batteries produce the least expensive electricity. This is the main reason the immensely powerful fossil fuel industry in our country is using its money and influence to control the energy industry. California has grown from the world's fifth largest economy to the fourth largest since its introduction of a strong policy supporting renewable energy. And last year, 90% of new power-generated plants in the world were solar or wind facilities. If we really desire an affordable New York, the state energy plan must advance the goals of our current laws to continue the rapid build-out of solar, wind, and battery storage facilities, not walk back and surrender to the fossil fuel industry. Pat?
Our editorial cartoon today is from Gary Vavrell of Creators Syndicate. It is one frame. It is an elephant sitting at a desk with his arms crossed and a donkey screaming at the elephant in anger, holding a large woman's leg. And on the leg, it's on the thigh part, it says Obamacare. And let me tell you, go back. The elephant is sitting at a desk that says he's responsible for subsidies. And the donkey holding that leg with Obamacare is angrily hollering at him, saying, "You used up all the glue on purpose," referring to the delays on the Obamacare health bill. Rita?
And from Rob Carr, an article entitled "Elimination of the Penny Will Cost Plenty." As the U.S. Treasury phases out the use of the penny, it's creating a host of new challenges for businesses and consumers that could cost all of us a good chunk of change. That's because eliminating the 1-cent piece is more complicated than it seems, creating a two-tier system that treats customers who pay with cash differently than customers who pay electronically. This raises a host of legal and regulatory concerns, from unequal treatment of consumers to proper tax collection. The crux of the problem is rounding. Without pennies, cash transactions will either be rounded up or down to the nearest 5 cents. And because federal and state officials have not provided guidance on this issue, businesses are left to set their own rounding policies. The law of uniform distribution tells us that over many transactions, there are likely to be as many transactions that are rounded down as rounded up. But this scenario disproportionately affects consumers who rely on cash, the majority of whom come from lower-income households or are adults over the age of 55, according to the Federal Reserve Financial Services. If rounding only applies to cash transactions, consumers paying with a card may be penalized, as they are required to pay the exact amount, while those paying with cash may have their transactions rounded down to the nearest nickel, depending on the total cost of transaction. This uneven treatment not only raises questions of fairness, but the lack of guidance from federal and local government also leaves retailers at risk of violating sales and excise tax collection rules and consumer protection regulations. Consider this real-world scenario. Under federal law, those receiving Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program benefits cannot be treated differently than non-SNAP recipients. Because SNAP benefits are loaded onto debit cards, they are processed as an electronic transaction. That means SNAP recipients will pay the exact amount for an item, whereas their non-SNAP counterparts paying with cash may have their total rounded down. This puts retailers in different conflict with federal law. Though the Illinois Retail Merchants Association is working to educate state and federal officials on needed policy updates caused by the phase-out of the penny, it will take time before changes can be put in place. In the meantime, retailers are being forced to take in costly regulatory and compliance risks. Meanwhile, as more consumers choose to pay electronically rather than with cash to avoid the hassling of rounding, they'll also be on the hook for more payments. Our association has led the way in limiting these fees, securing passage of the first law in the nation to prohibit banks and credit card companies from charging processing fees on the tax and tip portion of a transaction. But Wall Street banks, credit card companies, and card processors are fighting these consumer protections in court. Regardless of the outcome of that case, the transition away from the penny will only increase the use of digital payment methods and the accompanying fee. Eliminating the penny may seem like a small change, but businesses and customers will feel the impact long after the coin disappears.
Who would have thought that penny caused such furor? A penny for your thoughts.
There you go.
Is worth a nickel, I guess. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 28 minutes after the hour, and we will now continue with our opinion pieces. The next coming from Chris Churchill of the Albany Times-Union. Blakeman's candidacy just complicated things for Stefanik. Among many GOP leaders, Bruce Blakeman's recently announced gubernatorial candidacy is being welcomed like thunderclouds over a picnic. In some respects, that's hard to figure. Blakeman is the Republican county executive in vote-rich Nassau County on Long Island. He was reelected last year with ease. On social issues, his views are arguably aligned with those of the median New York voter. And for what it's worth, he looks the part. This guy is central casting, Donald Trump said of Blakeman at a 2024 rally in the Bronx. If I'm doing a movie on the politician, this is the guy I have playing. So what's the problem? For one, the party is convinced that a 2022 primary ultimately doomed Lee Zeldin's attempt to defeat Governor Kathy Hochul and is eager to avoid a repeat. For two, much of its leadership has placed a bet on the candidacy of Elise Stefanik, the North Country Congresswoman. In that context, Blakeman is an interloper and potential spoiler. He is not going to succeed, and we are determined that there will not be a primary. Ed Cox, chair of the state Republican Party, told me it will not happen. He understands what New York needs and what we need to be unified as a party. Blakeman contends that his downstate base and Nassau County accomplishments make him the stronger candidate. His side also believes that his pro-choice stance and moderation on gun control would make him more acceptable to the moderates and independents that a Republican must woo to win. But Stefanik, 41, argues that those positions would alienate upstate Republicans and depress party turnout, dooming Blakeman's general election candidacy. She accuses the nascent challenger of launching an ego-driven effort that is, in effect, an early Christmas gift for Hochul. Other upstate Republicans noted that Blakeman has lost prior runs for higher office, including for state controller, U.S. Senate and House seats, and mayor of New York City. I heard the 70-year-old described as an uninspiring candidate who lacks Stefanik's useful energy and perhaps most importantly, her fundraising prowess. Joe Surata, the Saratoga County GOP chair, said that he urged Blakeman in a recent phone conversation to get behind Stefanik's candidacy and forego his own. Other party leaders, Cox included, voiced something similar. Of course, if Blakeman insists on going ahead with the primary, there isn't much that Cox or anyone else can do to stop him. While getting onto the ballot without party support isn't easy, it isn't impossible. As the New York Times reported, Blakeman and the president go way back and mingled in similar social circles. So far, Trump doesn't seem willing to publicly choose between his friend and the loyalist like Stefanik. They're both great people, he said, but that could change. Sources said the president is also eager to head off a primary. A hard-fought but respectful contest, assuming such a thing still can exist, sharpens messages and elevates name recognition. And as Kamala Harris' candidacy proved, coronations don't always work out. On the other hand, Stefanik versus Blakeman might devolve into a Trump love-a-thon that would tickle the president's fancy, no doubt, but alienate many voters, as Hochul put it. Let's see how they out-MAGA each other. Meanwhile, some Republicans privately are becoming more pessimistic about the party chances. Given Trump's sinking approval numbers, sustained enthusiasm among Democratic voters, the declining importance of crime as a motivating issue, and the flat gubernatorial campaign being waged by Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado, a Democrat. The hope had been that Hochul would face a bruising primary of her own, and that Zohran Mamdani's election as New York City mayor would lead to inter-party mayhem. Both prospects seem unlikely. Given all that, it's perhaps fair to wonder why Stefanik or Blakeman would want to run, or whether the looming prospect of an energy-sapping primary could lead either to view the effort as folly. Cox, though, left no doubt that Stefanik would be the party's candidate and insisted Hochul is vulnerable. The party has a real chance to win, he said, and rescue New Yorkers from one-party government. We are unified as a party, saying we don't want a primary, Cox said. Republicans might get one regardless. Lita?
Okay, so here's a really cool story, and if you're a lot like me, and I am like me, this is very good news. The shingles vaccine could be a way to protect against dementia. A relatively mundane middle-aged rite of passage, shingles vaccination might offer an added benefit, protection against or even the slowing the progression of dementia. Over the past several years, a growing body of research has suggested that immunization against shingles may reduce the risk of dementia by up to 20%. Now, a new study adds a tantalizing twist. The vaccine may also have a therapeutic effect in those who already have the condition. This wasn't a modest effect either. The shot appeared to lower the risk of death associated with dementia over the course of almost a decade by nearly 30%. The findings are another reminder of the remarkable and often unexpected ways that vaccines can protect us well beyond their intended role of preventing infection. And if the findings hold up in more rigorous studies, the results could point to a relatively inexpensive and widely available tool with the potential to meaningfully improve population health, and that would be astounding. Anyone who has had chickenpox is at risk for shingles, characterized by a painful blistering rash, and that's because the varicella zoster virus that causes chickenpox hibernates in our nervous system until it reemerges later in life. What then could a vaccine against shingles possibly have to do with dementia? Researchers have two plausible theories. The first focuses on the virus itself. If the chickenpox virus is repeatedly activated and then suppressed by the immune system, it could cause brain inflammation that contributes to dementia, said Pascal Geltzer, a Stanford University population health scientist who led the vaccine study. That theory aligns with what we know about the sneaky ways viruses can wreak havoc long after we've recovered from an infection. Increasing evidence has also linked the Epstein-Barr virus to multiple sclerosis. The theory is that the virus features a protein that resembles one found in the brain and spinal cord. So when the immune system mounts an attack, it mistakenly chips away at the protective coating on nerve cells. Several groups are working to develop a vaccine against Epstein-Barr in the hope that it might protect against multiple sclerosis too. The other hypothesis rests on some vaccines' ability to offer broader health benefits that come not from targeting the virus, but from triggering the immune system to be on the hunt for bad actors. For example, researchers recently found that the mRNA-based COVID vaccines might extend the lives of certain cancer patients. This effect appears to result from enhancing the immune system at precisely the right time, enabling it to eliminate tumors more effectively. A large body of work indicates that a tuberculosis vaccine offers protection against other infections and notably has reduced the infant mortality rate in some countries. More recent research suggests that the BCG vaccine may also reduce the risk of dementia. Researchers, meanwhile, also need to address two big caveats about these findings. The first is that the connection is based on studies that looked back at people who did or did not receive the shingles vaccine rather than on randomized placebo-controlled trials that can definitively establish an effect. To be fair, these were unusually robust observational studies that compared people born within weeks of each other in the UK, either before or after a strict age cutoff for vaccination. The second has perhaps greater real-world implications. The studies all rely on data collected when people receiving the older shingles vaccine, Zostavax, which is no longer used in the US or Europe. That shot was made from a weakened form of the varicella zoster virus, which, however, the current vaccine, Shingrix, exposes the immune system to only a portion of the virus. Does the effect hold up with the current shot, which the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention made the preferred choice in 2018? We just don't know. If the benefits come from shutting down the virus, they may be as good or even better with the newer vaccine, which is far more effective and longer lasting than the old one. But if the way the vaccine triggers the immune system's response is what matters, then the newer shot might not help. It is also worth exploring whether a booster could extend those benefits. And what does all this mean for younger generations who have grown up with the chickenpox vaccine? Well, many Gen Xers and older millennials have visceral memories, and maybe a few scars, and yes indeed, from their days of itchy misery from chickenpox. A vaccine against varicella was added to the routine childhood immunization schedule in 1996. It will be decades before we determine whether lifelong protection from chickenpox affects brain health. All of these questions need to be explored in the lab and in clinical trials. Geltzer has been trying to raise money to conduct a randomized controlled trial of the older vaccine to conclusively determine its effectiveness in preventing or treating dementia. Getting that off the ground has been a slog. He told me about his plans to run the trial 2 years ago, and yet the funding still hasn't materialized. Let's hope that changes as evidence of these potentially significant additional benefits of vaccinations mounts. Ideally, such a trial would also examine the current shingles vaccine too. After all, if the effect holds up, it could mean the world would have a relatively inexpensive, one-time intervention to lower the risk of dementia or even slow it down. That's something everyone surely would be clamoring to get.
That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
They're making so many strides. That's great. And now we go to our finance page. Trump's next Fed chair faces no-win scenario. It was always going to be one of the Kevins. At least that was the impression among many across Wall Street and Washington when it came to President Trump's selection for the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Trump hinted for months that he wanted his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, for the job, but Bessent kept declining the offer. That placed Kevin Hassett, a longtime loyalist and economic advisor to Trump, and Kevin Warsh, a former Fed governor who had been in spitting distance of becoming chair during the president's first term, in leading positions to take over Jerome Powell in May. The decision comes down to who Trump believes will be more successful in delivering the substantially lower borrowing costs that he has long struggled to get from Fed under Powell. Trump, who elevated Powell to the chair in 2017, appears haunted by that decision. He has made it clear that this time he wants someone more malleable who will take his advice. That prerequisite creates a credibility problem for whoever is selected, one that will be difficult to escape. A chair who is seen as beholden to the president risks eroding the public confidence that the Fed is making decisions in the best interest of the economy, not the White House. If that crumbles, borrowing costs could move higher, not lower, as the president wants. Anyone who gets the job is damaged goods, said Andy LaPierre, head of the U.S. policy research for Piper Sandler. You're either going to be a guy who succeeds in getting what the president wants, which will not bode well for your treatment in the history books, he said, or you're going to be the guy who doesn't get what the president wants, and he's going to probably turn on you. It is really a no-win scenario for those involved, said Jangel D. Goldberg, head of U.S. interest rate strategy at TD Securities. Either you get worries about credibility or you get somebody who's more credible and less loyal. Kash Desai, a White House spokesperson, said in a statement that Trump was committed to nominating the best and most qualified individuals to turn the Biden economic disaster around. Rising angst about the future of the Fed has not gone unnoticed by the administration. On Tuesday, Bessent praised the Kevins, saying both are very, very qualified. This idea that people don't have agency and can't make up their own minds is wrong, he told Fox Business. What the next chair needs, however, is an open mind, the Treasury Secretary added, especially the idea that growth does not create inflation. Lita?
And after all that kind of good news about the shingles vaccine, here's a little bad news. The super flu variant is circulating and raising concern. A new version of the common flu is spreading globally, and health officials are monitoring this evolving strain of influenza A H3N3 subclade K, which has been increasingly detected worldwide. Seasonal influenza activity has increased globally in recent months, with influenza A viruses accounting for the majority of detections, according to the World Health Organization. Health officials are closely monitoring a growing subgroup of influenza A H3N2 viruses known as J241, also referred to as subclade K. The WHO says detection of this subclade has risen rapidly since August of 2025 based on genetic sequence data shared through the global GISAID database. Current epidemiological data do not indicate increased disease severity associated with subclade K, the WHO says, though its spread reflects the continued evolution of seasonal influenza viruses. What is subclade K? Well, subclade K is a genetically distinct subgroup of influenza A H3N2 viruses, according to the WHO. These viruses have drifted genetically from related J24 viruses and carry several amino acid changes in the hemagglutinin protein, which plays a key role in the virus's attachment to human cells. Influenza viruses commonly undergo such changes over time. Global surveillance tracks these shifts to assess potential impacts on transmission, severity, and vaccine effectiveness. Where is subclade K circulating? The World Health Organization reports that subclade K viruses were first detected at increased levels beginning in August of this year, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. Since then, the viruses have been identified in more than 34 countries over the past 6 months, including the United States. Detections are increasing in many regions of the world, except so far in South America, according to the WHO. So what's happening in our country? Well, data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show that influenza activity in North America remains relatively low, but is increasing, driven mainly by detections of influenza A viruses. And during the 2025 Southern Hemisphere influenza season in the Americas, transmission exceeded the seasonal threshold in mid-March and mainly remained at low to moderate levels, the CDC said. The CDC reports a predominance of influenza A H3N2 in both the United States and Canada, with growing detections of the A H3N2 subclade K. Are the symptoms any different? The WHO says there's no evidence that infections caused by subclade K produce symptoms that differ from or are more severe than those caused by other seasonal influenza A H3N2 viruses. Seasonal influenza symptoms typically include fever, sore throat, cough, runny or stuffy nose, muscle or body aches, headache, and fatigue. Severity can vary based on age, underlying the health conditions, and immune status. Do vaccines still protect? Well, early estimates cited by the WHO suggest that seasonal influenza vaccines continue to protect against severe illnesses and hospitalization in both children and adults. While effectiveness against symptomatic infection may vary from season to season, health officials say vaccination remains one of the most effective public health measures, particularly for people at higher risk of influenza complications and their caregivers. Even when circulating viruses differ genetically from vaccine strains, vaccines may still reduce the risk of severe outcomes, the WHO said. So what's next? Well, the WHO says it continues to monitor global influenza activity and viral evolution, while support countries in surveillance efforts and updating guidance as new data emerges. Health officials note that changes in circulating influenza virus are expected each season and are routinely assessed through international monitor systems. Pat?
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Creighton, DDS, Paul. DeSantis, Michael. Harris, Mary Magdalene. Morlock, Nee Andres, Alexandra Marie. Pavlowski, Chester. Pinecofer, Mazurek, Patricia Ann, Nee Polick. Taukez, Mildred, Nee Ackerman. Also, on the national level, Norman Podhoretz, the longtime editor of Commentary magazine and a lion of neoconservatism, whose intellectual odyssey took him from embracing the left to condemning a world order in his eyes that had become spineless in the face of Soviet expansionism and later Islamic militancy, died in Manhattan on Tuesday. He was 95. Also on the national level, Gil Gerard, 82. An actor best known for his role as Buck Rogers in the science fiction television show Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, died in hospice care in Georgia on Tuesday. He was 82. Also on the national level, Joe Ellie, a singer and songwriter from the vast fatness of West Texas, whose mastery of the South's varied musical traditions and paeans to the open road earned him the nickname Lord of the Highway and made him a leading artist in the development of the modern Americana sound, died Monday at his home at Taos, New Mexico. He was 78. And on the local level, Dr. John Twist enjoyed caring for his dental patients, running his busy Lackawanna practice, and mentoring younger dentists and students. There was something that meant even more to him: his Catholic faith and his devotion to Our Lady of Victory Basilica near his Lackawanna home. He was a kind and compassionate man who really cared for his patients, but what meant the most to him was OLV, recalled Catherine Burns, one of his nieces. He went to Mass there every single day. He really was part of the greatest generation. He took pride in mentoring and supporting future dentists, and his dedication was honored through the establishment of the John Twist DDS Scholarship at the UB Dental School, an enduring reflection of his belief and education. He also served as the Centennial Committee celebrating the building of the Basilica and was recently honorary chair for the upcoming 100th anniversary of the consecration of the Basilica on May 2026. A massive Christian burial will be offered at 10 a.m. Friday at OLV Basilica. Now, once again, if you need any further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
And if you happen to be born on the 18th of December, happy birthday to you. So let's go to the Royal Stars. You are focused on ambition. You are also an imaginary visionary who can stay on top of details. This is a playful, fun-loving year. Socialize and enjoy life. Let your guard down and loosen up a bit. And the stars show the kind of day you'll have, so here you go. 5 is the best, and 1, boy, you better watch out. So starting with Aries, which is 4 stars, do what you can to satisfy your urge to escape and seek adventure. You want to blow town and get a chance of scenery. Why not check out a part of your neighborhood you've never been to before? Explore a little. And tonight, interesting discussions. For Taurus, 3 stars, you are the financial wizard of the zodiac. And today, 4 planets are sitting in your money house, making this the appropriate time to focus on banking and issues related to taxes, debt, shared property, inheritances, and insurance matters. Tonight, check your finances. Moving on to Gemini, you also have 4 stars. Today, there are 4 planets opposite your sign. Venus and Mercury will encourage pleasant conversations and warm exchanges. However, the moon will require that you compromise and accommodate the needs of someone else. So tonight, cooperate. Cancer, 3 stars. Today, you might have to put the needs of someone else before your own, because a handful of planets are in the part of your chart that focuses on service to others. Tonight, focus on work. And all you lions, Leo, you are creative, and you got a tough one. You got 4 stars. Dramatic and romantic. Today, 4 planets are urging you to socialize and have fun. And enjoy the arts, grab a movie, explore the entertainment world, sports events, and playful activities with kids tonight. Socialize. And you Virgos out there, 3 stars. Home, family, and your private life are your primary focus at this time. Home repairs and family conversations might be taking place. Tonight, relax at home. Libra, 4 stars. You have a strong urge to express your views to someone today, which is why it's important that you find someone who will listen to you. You don't want to spend time on superficial chit-chat. You have something to say. Tonight, focus on your discussions. In Scorpio, As the full moon passes through your money house today, you might find that the identity more than usual with something that you own. Tonight, check your belongings. Sagittarius, tonight the moon is in your sign along with Mercury, Venus, the sun, which means the entire world is having a Sagittarian hit. Tonight, you're confident. Capricorn, in one way, you want to be low-key because the moon and 3 other planets are hiding in your chart waiting for your birthday. Nevertheless, fiery Mars has just moved into your sign. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Aquarius, you're enjoying the company of friends, younger people, and artistic types, as well as increased involvement in clubs and organization. And this pleases you. Tonight, talk to a friend. It might be difficult because you got 4 stars. And for Pisces, finally, you are empowered now because 4 planets are high in your chart. With only 3 stars, this means it's an ideal time to make your pitch or ask for a favor or seek approval from authority figures. Tonight, you are admired.
And today in history. In 1865, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery was declared in effect by Secretary of State William Seward. In 1892, Peter Tchaikovsky's ballet, The Nutcracker, publicly premiered in St. Petersburg, Russia. Although now considered a classic, it received a generally negative reception from critics. And in 1917, Congress proposed an amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibiting alcohol. The 18th Amendment was declared ratified. In 1919, prohibition was repeated in 1933 by the 21st Amendment. And some news in brief. Family Stars fundraiser to fulfill woman's wish to help food pantry. A family of a Buffalo native have started a GoFundMe campaign to finish raising money to renovate a food pantry in Kissimmee, Florida. The family of Martha Hart Cusimano, who died in November at the age of 82, posted a campaign on the fundraising website that set a goal of $60,000 for the Lima Center, a food pantry that serves some 70,000 people a year in the greater Orlando area.
Good for her.
Cusimano and her husband, James, who both were raised in Buffalo, helped raise more than $4 million for the Lima Center, which is a project of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church in Kissimmee. The project remains about $300,000 short of its goal of $4.4 million. Shortly before her death, she asked her family to finish the project she helped start, to build a growing food pantry, a larger building, and upgrade its refrigerated systems. Patty Cusimano Gomez, the couple's daughter, said the finishing the Lima Center renovation project was literally her mother's dying wish. You've been listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Thursday, December 18th on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Lita
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And we'll continue now with our readings of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Lita. And Mercy Flight to grow with $2 million acquisition of Finger Lakes EMS provider. Mercy Flight has charted a path to the Finger Lakes, announcing the acquisition of an Ontario County emergency medical services provider that will grow the Cheektowaga nonprofit's payroll by 100 employees and expand its ground ambulance footprint east. Mercy Flight said Wednesday that it signed a purchase agreement to acquire Clifton Springs-based Finger Lake Ambulance EMS Incorporated, which covers about 1,200 square miles across Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Wayne, and Yates counties. The acquisition needs approval by the Finger Lakes and Monroe-Livingston Regional EMS Councils and the State Health Department. Scott Wooten, Executive Vice President and Treasurer of Mercy Flight, said the purchase price is about $2 million, subject to potential upward or downward adjustments at closing. Over the last 5 years, Mercy Flight said it has worked collaboratively with Finger Lakes Ambulance through improved coordination, operational alignment, and shared clinical priorities. Both organizations, like EMS agencies nationwide, have had staffing shortages, higher call volumes, increased operating costs, and unstable reimbursement structures. As the partnership deepened, leaders at Mercy Flight and Finger Lakes Ambulance decided to pursue a plan to combine under Mercy Flight's nonprofit EMS structure. Mercy Flight said it believes this model could be the first of its kind in New York State by bringing together a nonprofit and a for-profit EMS organization under one nonprofit system. And this opportunity allows us to offer access to safe, reliable, and compassionate ground medical transport services through our not-for-profit ground-air integration model, Mercy Flight President Margaret Ferrantino said in a statement. The acquisition of Finger Lakes Ambulance represents an expansion of Mercy Flight's ground ambulance services. Mercy Flight said it foresees no changes to its air ambulance services in Western New York, and it expects to continue working with Mercy Flight Central, an unrelated nonprofit air ambulance provider headquartered in Canandaigua that covers the Finger Lakes region. Finger Lakes Ambulance began in 1955 as Walter Ambulance. In May 1988, Walter's ambulance service was bought by Clifton Springs manufacturer G.W. Lisk and incorporated under the names of Finger Lakes Ambulance EMS Incorporated. Today, Today, Finger Lakes Ambulance employs about 100 people, and its fleet includes 16 ambulances, 4 emergency ALS first response vehicles, and 1 physician response vehicle. It's important to us that the high standard of EMS care in the region continues under a trustworthy partner that puts patient first, G.W. Lisk Board Chair Bob Woodhouse said in a statement. And we believe Mercy Flight, with its nearly 45 years of service to its community, is the right organization to take on this responsibility. Mercy Flight said all of Finger Lakes Ambulance employees, including emergency medical technicians, paramedics, dispatchers, and support staff, will be welcome into Mercy Flight's nonprofit mission. Mercy Flight said operations will continue without interruption during transition. Mercy Flight, which has 300 employees, operates helicopter bases in Cheektowaga, Olean, Springville, and Batavia. Its ground ambulance division, Mercy Flight EMS, provides services for Genesee County, Niagara County, Orleans County, and the towns of Hamlet and Concord, and the village of Springville. Mercy Flight will have 400 employees once the Finger Lakes Ambulance acquisition closes. Pat?
Judge okays $1.7 million in legal fees for diocese. A federal bankruptcy judge on Wednesday approved nearly $1.7 million in professional fees and expenses for 8 law firms, a communications firm, and a financial advisor that did work for the Buffalo Catholic Diocese between February and the end of July. The court takes note that this is a substantial amount of money. Chief Judge Carl Buckey of U.S. Bankruptcy Court for Western District stated, the only consolation that the court has is it appears we're making progress towards a global settlement. He also said the huge fee award should stand as motivation to work as quickly as possible to a financial resolution of this case. As of the end of August, the diocese had paid out nearly $18.7 million in fees and expenses to a dozen law firms and 3 other professional firms since filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 2020. The bankruptcy process requires that a judge approve all requests for compensation made by professional firms, which must explain how they spent their time working on behalf of the debtor, in this case, the diocese. The diocese also must pay the legal fees of the official committee of unsecured creditors, which is being represented by Pacholski, Stang, Zeal, and Jones, as well as 2 other law firms. Buckeye approved the most recent compensation request, although he did lower some of the payment amounts submitted by some firms. For example, Bond, Schoeneck, and King, the lead law firm representing the diocese in the bankruptcy case, submitted a bill totaling $811,262 for work done from February 1 to July 31. However, the Office of the U.S. Trustee, in its review of the bill submissions, found that the diocese had been overcharged by $14,803. The trustee found several instances in which multiple Bond, Schoeneck, and King professionals appeared to perform the same task, billing for some administrative tasks that should be assumed as overhead cost, and a handful of duplicative entries or entries that were too vague. Bond, Schoeneck, and King ultimately agreed to reduce its bill by $10,500. Other law firms also agreed to minor reductions due to similar concerns cited by the U.S. trustees. These are the following firms that submitted bills. Blank Rome LLP, $105,077. The Tucker Group LLC, $21,425. Connors LLP, $66,709. Chalice, Herzig, Speyer, and Monty, $43,089. Jones Day, $116,679. Phoenix Management, $22,892. Pacholski, Stang, Zeal, and Jones, $385,099. Burns Blair LLP, $123,000. $649. Glenchise, Marchese, and Wishar, $18,060. Lita?
In some local news here, a necessary force was okayed for suspect in trafficking crimes. An accused Jamestown drug dealer faces charges for human trafficking crimes, including the kidnapping of 8 victims, the sex trafficking of 3 children, and attempting to put victims into slavery or involuntary servitude. The U.S. Attorney's Office recently filed the charges against Edward E. Leeper, Jr., also known as Edward E. Barnes, Jr., who is 47. Leeper, who is also accused of dealing fentanyl and methamphetamine, has pleaded not guilty, court officials said on Friday. The Jamestown resident is the subject of an unusual order signed on the 14th of November by Magistrate Judge Michael Romer, who is overseeing Leeper's case. The judge's order gave federal marshals and other law enforcement officers permission to use necessary force anytime they have to secure Leeper and deliver him to court for proceedings. Leeper has been in jail since February when he was indicted on felony drug trafficking charges. 13 additional felony charges, including drug trafficking, kidnapping, and 3 counts of sex trafficking of children, were announced by federal prosecutors on the 5th of December. Leeper's alleged crimes took place between 2018 and 2024, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joshua Violante said in court papers. The case was investigated by U.S. Homeland Security Investigations, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Jamestown Police, and the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office. Authorities have asked that anyone with information about Leeper contact Homeland Security Investigations at 866-347-2423. The U.S. Attorney's Office would not say on Friday why they sought permission for federal marshals to use necessary force when moving Leeper from jail to court. Pat?
Damon University approved to offer first academic PhD program. It will soon offer the first doctoral programs. The Amherst-based university received approval from the New York State Board of Regents to amend its charter and master plan to offer PhD programs in an academic track. Damon will offer its first PhD in behavioral science, and the school anticipates adding more academic doctorates to its offerings in the coming years. Damon will start accepting applications for the behavioral science PhD program next month, and the first cohort is planned to begin in the fall of 2026. The new doctoral program will allow the university to elevate its academic portfolio and is another way to increase enrollment during a difficult time for schools as they face an enrollment cliff for its traditional student base. The cliff, often discussed among those in higher education, refers to demographics. There is a steep drop-off in the number of traditional college-age students moving through the system, and universities are finding themselves competing more fiercely with shrinking population of potential students. While Damon already offers 4 professional and clinical doctorates, behavioral science represents the university's first academic doctorate. This is a major step forward for Damon as an institution because the PhD is considered the highest degree that can be awarded in the United States. Gary Olson, president of Damon, said in a statement, "Now that Damon's charter allows for the conferral of the PhD degree, we hope to develop more PhD programs from other disciplines in the future. The 56 credit program will be offered in the evening to accommodate working professionals. It is for students who already possess a master's degree in behavioral analysis from an accredited college or university and have a 3.4 GPA or higher. The program focuses on developing leaders and social scientists who can apply behavioral science across diverse systems, settings, and populations." Lisa Raffleson, founding dean of Damon's College of Health and Human Sciences and Business, said in a statement, "In addition to the core classes, the program will have 3 concentration areas in teaching, behavioral health, and intellectual and behavioral developmental disabilities." And Scrutiny gets a farewell surprise from court personnel. On his last day as a federal judge, the calendar for senior U.S. District Judge William Scrutiny indicated 2 difficult sentencing, one for sex trafficking defendant and another for someone who sold a lethal dose of fentanyl. But there was one accidental unscheduling proceedings. Dozens of court personnel poured into Scrutiny's 9th-floor courtroom in the Robert Hack Jackson U.S. Courthouse downtown on Wednesday after he presided over his last criminal case before the bench, before his retirement from the bench. Staffers from court offices and other judges' chambers, as well as several other judges, packed the gallery to wish Scrutiny a happy retirement and honor his tenure. I'm looking around because to me this is family. To me this is an extension of what every other lucky person like myself can have. People that are in your corner, that are there. I'm sure that if I asked any one of them to do anything, it would be done. That's what makes this job, this district, so special. Good luck and good health. Happy retirement.
And just a reminder, you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour. Moving over to sports, of course, we're going to talk about the Bills, and we all know their defense is a little sketchy, from Jay Skursky. With playoffs looming, Bills still face plenty of defensive questions. The Buffalo Bills should feel pretty good about where things stand on 2/3 of their team. Led by NFL MVP Josh Allen at quarterback, the offense has moved the ball exceptionally well for most of the past 10 quarters, save a bit of rough stretch early Sunday against the New England Patriots. The special teams, led by breakout kick returner Ray Davis, seems to be doing just fine. And that leaves the defense, which is where things get complicated. The defense has certainly contributed to the Bills' last 2 victories. The comeback at Cincinnati in Week 14 doesn't happen without a pair of timely takeaways, and the victory over New England started off miserable for the defense, but progressively got better to the point that the Patriots had 5 possessions after halftime, and 4 of them ended without points. You never want to peak too early, safety Cole Bishop said Wednesday. You always want to toward the latter part of the season, is when you want to be playing your best ball. You've seen that, second half against New England. We are all fired on all cylinders, so if we can just bring that together at the start of the game, it would be huge. On the other hand, the Bills have allowed 34 and 31 points in the past 2 games. Incredibly, they are 4-0 this season in games in which they've allowed 31 points more points, but that requires a level of perfection that is not always easy to obtain, even for Allen. Never is giving up 30 points acceptable, defensive coordinator Bobby Babbitt said on Monday. It's disgusting to us, to be honest with you. That is as straightforward of a quote as you'll hear from an NFL coach at this time of year. Babbage correctly called the first half against the Patriots inexcusable, which is the right word. New England scored 24 points and piled up a whopping 285 yards of offense in taking a 17-point lead into halftime. All 3 phases of the team contributed to the comeback win, but it is tough living to expect to overcome that sort of deficit with any regularity, especially with the postseason approaching. We're working to find the right combinations of guys out there, Bills coach Sean McDermott said on Wednesday. We've hit some bumps in the road with just some of the guys being in and out of the lineup through the course of the season. I think the coaching staff has done a phenomenal job of managing that. And then players have stepped up to the challenge. Overall, when you look at the game last week, it's what do you do when the moments are the brightest? When they need to stop 5 series in the second half, 4 stops. McDermott is right on both fronts. The Bills played against New England without middle linebacker and defensive captain Terrell Bernard, their top, maybe only interior pass rusher and defense tackle Ed Oliver, and Christian Benford, their number 1 cornerback, who the past few weeks has been playing as one of the NFL's top players at his position. Michael Haight, who impressed in his first 2 games back following an NFL suspension and looked like he was going to be a big factor, is out for the season after tearing his Achilles tendon. Defensive tackle Dwayne Carter, safety Taylor Rapp, rookie cornerback Dorian Strong, rookie defensive end Landon Jackson, and veteran safety Damar Hamlin are all on injured reserve. So, to think injuries haven't been a factor in the defensive results would be misguided. The reality is, the defense has given the team a chance to win in most games, including 3 of its 4 losses. Only the loss to Miami got away from the defense late, when the Dolphins broke a couple of long runs, but the score was 16-0 starting at the 4th quarter. So blame there falls more on the offense. The defense also has shown an ability to make an in-game adjustments and course correct when things have gone wrong. That has shown up in multiple games, most recently against the Patriots. I think that really speaks to the mental toughness of our defense, McDermott said. That said, yeah, it's hard to win when you're giving up explosive chunks and they're scoring like they are. So we continue to try and spin the dial to figure out what's the best combination of players, of schemes, so on and so forth. That's been the case pretty much most of the year. Takeaways in the second half, 4th quarter in particular, in the Bengal game, I'm not sure we win that game without those 2 takeaways. So a lot of it's good. I know you want to focus on the negative over here, and I'm going to stay focused on both ends of the spectrum because that's the perspective I have to have and how you get things corrected, and we play our best ball. That's the goal moving forward. There is a difference between focusing on the negative and merely pointing it out. The Bills rank tied for 16th in the league in allowing 23.1 points per game. Opponents are converting 42.7% of their third downs, which ranks number 25 in the league. That means getting off the field has been a problem. Their run defense is number 30 in the league, allowing 143.1 yards per game. That is a major concern with the playoffs approaching. The team used significant resources, including its first 5 picks during the NFL draft in April, on defensive players, and that side of the ball is still going to be the primary concern in January. A get-right opportunity presents itself Sunday against Cleveland. Under McDermott, the Bills are 14-4 when facing a rookie quarterback, including the postseason as they'll do against the Browns' Shedeur Sanders. Erasing the slow starts from the past couple of weeks and playing a full 60 minutes would be a comforting sign moving forward. That's the one thing with this defense. No matter what hole we put ourselves in, not taking away credit from any offense in this league, but whatever hole we put ourselves in, we're able to pull ourselves out, Babbage said. But we need to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in that hole. It starts with me, and we got to do our jobs at a high level.
Sabres players are embracing new standards. Tuck, Thompson, Dahlin are on same page as general manager. Alex Tuck said he found out about the Buffalo Sabres managerial change through a message that the team received right before the team publicly announced the firing of general manager Kevyn Adams on Monday. Tage Thompson said he found out Monday morning when he woke up to a barrage of messages following an overnight return from the team's most recent 6-game road trip. Rasmus Dahlin said he found out through his fiancée, Karolina Matovac. She saw it online, the Sabres captain said with a chuckle. 2 days after the Sabres announced the promotion of Jarmo Kekalainen to general manager following Adams' dismissal, the Sabres returned to the ice Wednesday and prepared to face the Philadelphia Flyers at 7:30 p.m. Thursday at KeyBank Center. Sabres coach Lindy Ruff and his assistants led practice. Defenseman Michael Kesselring skated with the team for the first time since he was placed on injured reserve November 15th with a lower body injury. Even Sabres and Buffalo Bills owner Terry Pegula and his daughter Laura, a Sabres alternate governor, were on the bench for practice. Now the Sabres must embrace the standard that Kekalainen is immediately setting for the team on ice and for the organization. He held a short meeting earlier this week with the players, and Dahlin reiterated that what Kekalainen said Tuesday in his introductory press conference. It's all about winning, and whatever happened in the past, this year's team isn't part of that history. Thompson said Kekalainen offered another message. Ownership of the remainder of the season is being put in your hands. The players are ultimately the ones that go on the ice and compete, Thompson said. It has to be us that wins games. That was the message, that we have to outwork and compete every night, and that's what we're going to get us wins. Tuck said Kekalainen made a declaration of faith in the players and in the roster as a whole, and that day-by-day approach will be valuable as the team moves through this phase of transition. Still, the knowledge that everything is being evaluated by him is in the back of the players' minds. Whatever you bring in new personnel, a lot of guys in here will know that you have to come in, maybe work a little bit harder, he said. He's been around. It's not just like a fresh start out or anything like that, but you definitely want to show you belong. You want to be in this room. You want to work as hard as you can. Obviously, that's in the back of the guys' minds. On Adams' departure, Adam crafted this year's roster, including signing Thompson and Dahlin to long-term contracts, acquiring Tuck as part of the trade with Vegas for Jack Eichel, signing goalie Alex Lyon as a free agent, and acquiring Kesselring and Josh Doan from Utah for J.J. Peterka. I think I owe a lot to Kevyn, Thompson said. I think everyone in here would say he's a tremendous human being and cares about everyone in this room. Obviously, he gave me a big, nice contract, and he was a big believer in my game when it wasn't at a pace where I am now. He gave me an opportunity to prove myself. It's unfortunate, but it's the nature of our business. Everyone is expendable, And that's just the kind of way it goes when you don't win. Dahlin said he and Adams had a good relationship, but he knew that the bottom line was about winning. Winning games, it's up to us to do, said Dahlin, who has not made the playoffs since he was drafted by the Sabres in 2018. You look at this lineup and he's done a pretty good job. It's business. Tuck made a bold statement given the Sabres' history since 2011, which was the last time they made the 16-team NHL playoffs. I have all the faith in the world that we can make the playoffs. I think that we've been playing some of our best hockey as of late. I'm just really focused on the present. What makes Tuck think this happened? Worry about tomorrow night, Tuck said ahead of the game against the Flyers. Play good defense, play a full 60-minute effort, and worry about tomorrow night. If we keep talking about making the playoffs, looking ahead, looking too far into the future, it's not going to happen. The Sabres began Wednesday's 10th in the wild card standings, 8th in the 8-team Atlantic Division, with 32 points behind Ottawa, 16th in the 16-team Eastern Conference, 2 points behind Columbus, and tied for 25th in the 32-team NHL standings. The Sabres enter the game with the Flyers on a 3-game win streak, the first of the season. Be consistent in playing winning hockey and not fall back into some things we've done this year, said Dahlin. But we always find a way to climb back. We've just got to find consistency, and then we can do something special. Kakalian said the third-generation manager to oversee the team since the Sabres drafted Dahlin in 2018. Jason Botterill was the general manager from May 2017 to June 22, followed by Adams. Lita?
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 28 minutes past the hour. And let's hear what Asking Eric has to say today. A political post on Facebook has fractured a long-time relationship. Dear Eric, I have a friend who is on the opposite side of politics from me. She sent me this message. After seeing your vile and disgusting lies on Facebook, I have no desire to be friends with anyone on the left. We have never approached any private political conversation as we recognize there was no convincing each other to change our thinking. We agreed to disagree, but she wants me to censor what I post on Facebook on her behalf. I think she should pause notifications of my post if she doesn't agree. I don't think it's fair of her to make these demands as she is the only friend who can't endure my daily assault with reposts. They are not directed personally at her. She rarely posts anything, and if she does, she doesn't tag me. If she doesn't like what I post, then she shouldn't bother reading them. This is the second time she has gotten so mad that she wouldn't speak to me for at least a year. The first time, 20 years ago, was when I didn't realize that she had tucked a beaded necklace that she made inside something meaningless. I didn't realize and gave the odd present to Goodwill. What's your take on all of this? Sign at the end of my rope. Dear Rope, I think the necklace might be different from the Facebook situation, but the fact that it's bringing up a similar frustration in you may be an indication that the friendship has run its course. Even without the political differences, there may be a personality mismatch. It's impractical to demand that another person censor their posts on social media. And frankly, most of what people post on social media is not that interesting, me included. And that's why likes exist. If you see something a friend posts that catches your interest, a meal, a child, an animal, you can like it. If it doesn't catch your interest, you can keep scrolling. If she doesn't want to keep scrolling or mute you, I don't think you have a responsibility to change anything if what you're posting makes you happy. Dear Eric, I, 64, have a sibling from whom I distance myself, but he, at 77, keeps poking the bear. We have never been close, and I have no desire to tolerate his insults. He always had digs, nasty comments, and insults, and I would walk away and avoid him until he left. As years went by, I avoided him, but our mom would always insist on a family dinner. Now he was good at saving face. No comments when mom or other family members were around, but the moment we were stuck in the same room, insults flew. I was a constant support for my mom until she passed. I figured I was done with him too. Well, now he's trying to reach out to me. I have responded with "not gonna happen," and I wrote out all the grievances with details. Now he's been whining to my other brother, who's 70, that I'm mean to him and does not understand why I hate him. Brother number 2 has no idea this was happening in my life. I explained to number 2 and gave a few excerpts, one that really hurt. How can I get past this? Signed, No Longer Insulted. Dear No Longer, it's telling that your brother chose to, and you're telling whine to your other brother rather than try to clear the air with you. Even if he didn't agree with a single word of your letter, the natural thing to do is say, "I didn't realize you felt this way. Can we talk about it?" Because he hasn't done this, it's hard to take his desire to reach out seriously. This isn't to say that he's not genuine. I have no way of knowing. But relationships aren't jukeboxes. You don't just plunk in a quarter and have a nice family dinner pop up. You ask how you can get past this. Part of the solution is accepting you didn't get the support from your family that you needed and that wasn't fair. Your brother may have been good at putting up a front, but over the years, someone must have seen something in him or in your avoidance. This isn't putting the blame on them. Your brother is responsible for what he did. But there's likely a part of you that wants someone to acknowledge what happened. If you don't want to hash this out with your brother, and I can see why you wouldn't, you might have to give yourself permission to disengage. You've responded and given him your reasons. He may not like it, but you don't have to make it okay. Pat?
America's 250th birthday planning features a delicate balancing act. 2 partners are each taking the lead in dance to celebrate America's 250th birthday next year. Rosie Rios, chair of a bipartisan commission created by Congress to plan events to commemorate the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and President Trump, chair of a White House task force that is making its own plans. While Trump and his appointees have pushed to put his face on many of the semi-quintessential events, Rios' 24-member commission and its advisors have largely maintained control over a national jubilee that will kick off in earnest around New Year's Day. To Rios, the former U.S. Treasurer in the Obama administration, who joined the commission 2 years after its 2016 establishment and became chair in 2022, it's all going according to plan. The president has the reins for events in Washington, D.C., while the commission's plans laid out in a 56-page playbook take place throughout the country. How the administration or the Supreme Court or any other branch of the government wants to launch their own initiative, that is their prerogative, Rios said. This president deserves every right to lead a celebration in the way that he wants to lead a celebration. And we are supportive as it relates to our playbook, as relates to our programming, as it relates to our partnership. Rio said she reached out to Trump team shortly after he won the 2022 election. Her message: create a White House task force and take the lead on the celebration in Washington, including the parade, fireworks, and the events on the National Mall on July 4th. Trump created his America 250 task force less than 10 days after his inauguration and naming himself chair, started to unveil his plans for the celebration, a National Garden of American Heroes, an Ultimate Fighting Championship bout at the White House on June 14th, his 80th birthday, and a parade in Washington on July 4th. The administration is taking the lead on D.C. as they should. That was my recommendation, Rio said. Rios was guided by history when she suggested that the White House form its own task force. She noted that a commission similar to hers was established to plan for the bicentennial in 1976, but it was disbanded in 1973 amid concerns that President Richard Nixon would use it for political purposes. No politics, just purpose for us, she said. Every single commissioner has agreed that no politics is allowed at our commission meetings. You will never, ever hear an ideology, political, religious, or otherwise, at our commission meetings. But Trump used a quintessential kickoff event in Iowa this summer as an opportunity to blast Democrats for failing to support GOP's big, beautiful budget reconciliation bill. I hate them, he said. I cannot stand them because I really believe they hate our country. The U.S. Semi-Quintessential Commission, better known as America 250, was created by Congress in July 2016, with 8 members of the House and Senate from both parties, 16 citizen members, and 12 non-voting members representing federal agencies. The first chairman appointed by Trump was Philadelphia developer Dan DeLella, but he resigned in 2022 after becoming embroiled in litigation over his management style. President Joe Biden tapped Rios to take over. Rios, who grew up in California as one of 9 children of Mexican immigrants, is a Harvard-educated professional in economic development who came to Washington in 2005 to help return a Major League Baseball team to the city. She also worked on Barack Obama's presidential campaign, which led to her appointment as treasurer in 2009, the post she held until 2016. She was appointed to the America 250 Commission 2 years later. Since becoming chair of the commission in July 2022, Rios has led development of plans that include sponsoring field trips to historic sites for students who submit presentations on America, raising funds from corporate sponsors, and a program to be launched on January 1 called America Gives, with a call for volunteer service and charitable giving. Rios vividly recalls the bicentennial celebrations when she was in the 5th grade at Hayward, California. I only have fabulous memories of that period, she said, recalling how Schoolhouse Rock commemorated the anniversary on television. I remember taking the field trip to see the Freedom Train. I remember seeing the tall ships coming through the Boston and New York harbors on our black and white TV. But for me, it's not just a memory, it is a feeling. People ask me all the time, what are you hoping for in 2026 that will be the legacy of the celebration? My answer is the same. I want as many Americans as possible to feel like this is the land of opportunity all over again. The commission slogan is 350 for 250, with plans to engage all 350 million Americans in the celebration next year. While we cannot all be all things to all Americans, we have something for every American. And it's up to every American to pick and choose how they want to participate, and that's the way we designated this playbook. At her recommendation, Rios said Trump established his Task Force 250 in January by executive order, inviting the America 250 Commission to provide it with recommendations and advice for planning events. Meanwhile, bipartisan support for the commission and its plans have grown. The Congressional America 250 Caucus reached 346 members, becoming the largest congressional caucus, she said. She works closely with top Trump advisors, Vince Haley, director of the Domestic Policy Council, Brittany Baldwin, senior policy advisor at the America 250 Task Force, as well as Chris LaCavita and Meredith Rourke, senior Trump campaign advisors. Political feuds have bubbled to the surface. Senator Eric Schmidt wrote to Trump in July urging him to fire Rios, saying she has a track record of extreme partisan bias against you and your administration. Trump also encouraged the executive director he appointed to the commission, former Fox News producer Ariel Ebergel to put the president's stamp on events planned by America 250. The executive director position at the commission is separate from Rios' chairmanship, but still holds decision-making power over its plans. Ebergel recommended that a cabinet agency take charge of the student field trips, pushed to have Trump's photo added to sponsorship logos, and sought to downplay group of ambassadors advising the commission, including historian Doris Kearns Goodwin and the former Democratic mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, according to published reports. He also reportedly tried to oust some citizen members of the commission to make room for more Trump loyalists. Rios and her commission resisted those efforts, and Ebergel resigned in September. Trump then appointed Jordan Wiggins, a former campaign aide to Vice President Vance, to serve as the commission's new executive director, but Rios said Wiggins has not assumed the role. Rios still insists a celebration has never been about one person, it's about one country. Anything that is of significant engagement to the American people is going to be a Rorschach test, she said, who is not taking a salary for her work as chair. People are going to take away what they're going to want to take away. I'm sure there are going to be people who choose to resist for the sake of resisting. There are going to be other folks who want to be all in and have the biggest celebration that we can offer.
And swinging back to some local news here, concerning a report that there's not enough staff services available in Erie County for mental health crises. When it launched in May, the Crisis to Care Collaborative committed to a bold goal. It promised to improve the crisis response for people experiencing a mental health emergency in Erie County. It took a step toward that goal Tuesday with the release of a report that analyzed the region's mental health crisis response system and will help guide future improvements. The report found the mental health emergency response system to be fragmented, involving a complex web of city, county, and state agencies, as well as nonprofits. It found too many calls to crisis hotline numbers going unanswered, and too few mobile crisis teams in the area to meet demand. It also found that far too many people are ending up at Erie County Medical Center for a crisis that doesn't require hospitalization. The gaps are real, but people working together are beginning to identify some solutions that would be more efficient and better for the people involved, said Mike Hogan, the report's lead author and a former commissioner of the State Office of Mental Health. Hogan credited the Crisis to Care Collaborative and its major supporter, the Patrick P. Lee Foundation, for involving so many different agencies and committing to systematic changes rather than one-off solutions. 30 government agencies and nonprofits participated in the report, with 10 of them contributing data. And with buy-in from so many different leaders, including elected officials in Erie County and Buffalo, along with Erie County Medical Center administrators, the report provides a glimpse at how the crisis response system could change. The nonprofit Crisis Service provided data for the report and is involved in the collaborative's efforts. President and CEO Jessica Pirro said the report brought forward some of the pain points that emergency providers, including crisis services, have felt since the COVID-19 pandemic, which only made staffing more challenging. But Pirro said she feels the collaborative has the right team in place to make improvements, noting the current system we have is producing the outcome we have. I just really believe that having the right people in the right time and the right moment will move this forward. And I feel like we're there, she said. And this initiative is holding collective accountability, which I think is also important. Crisis Services, which began operating in 1968, has long operated a hotline to service those experiencing a mental health crisis. It also is the call center that handles 988 calls that originate in Erie County. In 2024, more than 78,000 Erie County calls were made to the Crisis Service 24-hour crisis hotline, which is 716-834-3131, or to 988. the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline launched nationwide in 2022. Of those calls, nearly 52,000, or around 2/3 of the total, were resolved over the phone, meaning a counselor was able to de-escalate the situation and connect the person to services. But the report also found more than 21,500 of those calls, or nearly 28%, went unanswered. Pirro noted that figures included callers who hang up in seconds and may decide they're not ready to talk to someone, as well as frequent callers who make multiple calls. An unanswered call, Pirro noted, also doesn't mean that a caller wasn't served later on. That figure, however, also includes callers who decide not to wait for an available counselor. The goal for crisis hotline centers is to answer calls within 30 seconds, but caller volume and needs can be unpredictable. One of the things we also have seen is just the need for our callers needing more time on the line than maybe what we're historically seeing, said Pirro, noting that more supportive counseling can back up other calls waiting. The report notes crisis centers across the country have struggled with staffing challenges that can drive up wait times. Crisis Services also operates a 24/7 mobile outreach program serving Erie County, and the report notes that program has about 10 teams, each with a master's level licensed counselor and a bachelor's level professional who can be dispatched to the scene of a crisis. Those teams have been proven effective at diverting people from jail and hospital. Of the 3,804 mobile crisis dispatches in 2024, 1,700, or 45%, resulted in a complete visit. Of those, 960 calls were resolved on scene, and 751 resulted in a transport to Erie County Medical Center. Mobile crisis team, Hogan said, are effective in determining when inpatient treatment is needed, with 75% of those taken to the hospital after a mobile visit actually getting admitted. Of the total mobile crisis dispatches last year, 2,093, or 55%, did not result in a completed assessment of the person in crisis. Importantly, the report notes a majority of crisis calls handled by the mobile outreach program and deemed urgent, it can take hours or until the next day to respond, the report found. While many factors play into it, including long wait times for police, ambulance, and multiple attempts to find a client, the biggest issue is there just aren't enough mobile crisis teams to meet demand. This is a model that works, and it's just under-resourced, Pirro said. More resources are coming. Through the work of the Crisis to Care Collaborative, the Patrick P. Lee Foundation plans to provide support allowing crisis services to roughly double its number of mobile crisis teams over the next 3 years. What always strikes Hogan is the extent the United States hands over its response to mental health emergencies to law enforcement. As an alternative to traditional police-only response, several local police departments, including Buffalo, Cheektowaga, and West Seneca, have established co-response behavioral health teams. Those teams, which pair specifically trained officers with mental health clinicians, have shown promise, but their impact is limited so far, the report found. For example, in 2023, Endeavor Health Services found that 85% of those transported to Erie County Medical Center at the direction of Buffalo Behavioral Health Team were admitted to the hospital for inpatient care. That indicates effective on-scene triage. The Buffalo Police Department gets an average of 18 behavioral health calls each day, and the department's behavioral health team only self-dispatches to one of those calls a day, only on weekdays because the team does not have staff for weekend coverage. And when those teams are dispatched, it is typically in addition to a traditional police response. At the Cheektowaga Police Department, the behavioral health team is only able to respond to 1 out of every 18 mental health-related calls for service. Neither crisis services right now nor these co-response teams have enough staff to be able to intercept and assist in all the cases that they should, Hogan said. And when police or ambulance responds to a mental health call, they almost always transport the person to ECMC when immediate care is required. ECMC operates one of the state's busiest comprehensive psychiatric emergency programs, which can provide psychiatric evaluation and treatment for people experiencing a mental health crisis. While people can go to the 24/7 CPEP voluntarily, The state's mental hygiene law requires that people taken involuntarily to a hospital for psychiatric evaluation and treatment must be taken to a CPEP, the report notes. A major issue is that only 2,500 people, or about 1/4 of the people, arrived at CPEP last year were admitted for inpatient treatment, and that suggests that many visitors could have been served through alternative community-based programs instead of the hospital.
A little humor. There's a picture of a beautiful mixed breed dog, and it says social climber. A cat, a bird. No, wait, that's a dog climbing trees and fences. When Vanessa Marquette and her husband Ryan Marquette adopted Nola, more popularly known as Nosy Nola on social media, a 7-year-old German Shepherd mix in September of 2018, after fostering her, little did they know their dog's antics would go viral on social media. Videos of Nola jumping up trees and climbing over fences to satisfy her curiosity and peek into her neighbors' backyards have racked up millions of views on TikTok.
That's amazing.
Vanessa said a family friend and dog sitter, Lindsay, first noticed that Nola was always interested in trying to go through the fence of their previous home, which she would sneak through some spots when she was smaller. But when the family moved into the house they now are in Smyrna, Georgia, Nola kept escaping, and they weren't sure how until their neighbor told us they saw her jump over our chain link fence in the back. Later, they caught her climbing on our old wooden fence, and she would do it from time to time, Vanessa said. And that when the house got a new fence in 2022, Nola became way more active with it, explaining the new fence is much more sturdy. We also got rid of the chain link fence in the back, which also has a tree by it. So she has that place to climb too. She likes to go back and forth between the two. Vanessa said the first time she saw Nola climbing, she didn't realize what I saw. I told my husband, Ryan, that I think I saw her jump down from the tree, but maybe I'm crazy, Vanessa said, adding, we both thought I was. But when she saw Nola jump down again another day, she just started following her out and noticed she did this, especially when there were squirrels or something out there. For Vanessa and Ryan, their climbs were even more spectacular because Nola is mostly blind in one eye. Nola's actions also left her neighbors stunned, but they now also enjoy her antics. One couple jokes that she's security for their house when they are gone. They also said she enjoys looking into their yard when they're making steak. While Nola was initially afraid to climb in front of her humans, now she could care less who's watching. Lucky for her, she is a hit no matter where she goes. Besides climbing trees and fences, Nola loves hanging out with the family's other two rescue dogs, Toby 3 and Sammy 13, as well as other dogs she befriends at daycare where she goes. She also enjoys going on adventures like runs and pet-themed sports games with her family. Vanessa said her pet loves munching on raw carrots and bell peppers, and one annoying but cute thing she does is cuddle with our slippers and clothes when we are gone. What a nice ending for it.
That's a wacky
A
thing.
fun story.
Isn't that something? Yeah. Is there anything going on with the TV that we want to talk about, maybe?
Well, let's see what's happening on a couple of shorts that we can do
Okay.
on The Nation. Four centrist Republicans broke with Speaker Mike Johnson on Wednesday and joined a Democratic-led petition that will force a House vote on extending for 3 years an enhanced pandemic-era subsidy that lowers health insurance costs for millions of Americans. The move comes after House Republican leaders pushed ahead with a health care bill that does not address the soaring monthly premiums that millions of people will soon endure when the tax credits for those who buy insurance through the Affordable Care Act expire at year's end. The action sets the stage for a renewed intra-party clash over health care in January, something Republican leaders tried to avoid just weeks before another government funding deadline at the end of the month. The moderate Republicans were able to force the issue by signing a petition led by Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries to vote on a bill that would extend subsidies for 3 years. Republican Representatives Brian Fitzpatrick, Robert Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie, all from Pennsylvania, and Mike Lawler of New York, signed on Wednesday morning, pushing it to 218. A vote on the subsidy bill would come as soon as January under House rules. Unfortunately, it is House leadership themselves that have forced this outcome, Fitzpatrick said in a statement. FBI Deputy Director to step down in January. FBI Deputy Director Don Bongino said Wednesday that he will resign from the Bureau next month, ending a brief and tumultuous tenure in which he clashed with the Justice Department over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files and was forced to reconcile the realities of his law enforcement job with provocative claims he made in his prior role as a popular podcast host.
And that's it for us. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for December 18th. We read from the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Lita. Thanks for listening. Take care, and as always, keep smiling.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service with the New York Times Business section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,